So a lot has happened in the last week or so with Assassin's Creed, and I want to talk about it despite sounding like a 90-year-old chain-smoking grandma. As you can tell, I'm a wee bit sick, but I just had to talk about this, had to get it out there, so I'm here. And if you'll indulge me with my gravelly voice, then I would greatly appreciate it because there's a lot to talk about. We've of course found out details as to why Marc-Alexis, the former head of all of Assassin's Creed, why he left the company. We've also got new details on the multiplayer game that's in the works. And just this morning, we got a really interesting picture where Abu Bakr Salim was in the recording booth with his co-star from AC Origins, Alex Wilton Reagan, who played Aya. So they have Bayek and Aya in the recording booth again after working together on a game like 8 years ago, which I know it sounds crazy that that was 8 years ago, but that's how old Origins is. 2017, man. But to put it simply, Assassin's Creed is going through a pretty major transformation right now that I don't think you can understate. And I want to talk about it because I am quite skeptical of everything going on with it. I know some people are celebrating Mac's departure as like a good sign, a step in the right direction and all of that. But I think that that kind of has a built-in assumption that the person that will replace him will be better. And I do not think you can assume that given who is in charge of Assassin's Creed above that person. The person that now is in charge of Assassin's Creed, Rainbow, and Far Cry is, in my opinion, incompetent and basically like the personification of a Nepo baby. I'm going to explain it to you because it's insane. And I think some people are being maybe a little overly hopeful. And I'm saying this as somebody that likes Assassin's Creed. I've played this game since I was a little bitty kid. I love these games. I cherish the franchise. I disagree with a lot of the directions and things they've been doing in recent years, but it's because I care and it's because I love the franchise. And it pains me to see what I worry is about to happen to it, because the co-CEO of that new Vantage Studios group previously worked on a Web3 AI NFT bizarro dating sim nonsense machine. And this is what he was doing before he was put in charge of this multi-billion-dollar company. So shocker, I'm a little worried, and I'm gonna share why I'm worried with you in this video today, because just when you think it can't get any stupider, it does. But of course, a quick thank you to our sponsor.
Thank you to Kaku Ancient Seal for sponsoring this video. Kaku Ancient Seal is celebrating their launch on consoles, and so the developers are sponsoring this video so I can tell you all about it. It has dynamic gameplay with puzzles, combat, and exploration, and it prides itself on being an approachable first Zelda-like game for both new players and experienced players alike. And while you play through the varied puzzles, combat, and exploration sequences, you will always have something to keep you engaged by swapping between weapons, elemental powers, all offering you a chance at creativity without overwhelming complexity. And so you'll no doubt be entertained both visually and in terms of gameplay. And one thing I noticed while traveling recently and playing it on the go was just how easy it was to pop in, have some fun, and pop back out to resume later, whether that be for 20 minutes or a couple of hours. It's beautiful, colorful, and fun, and you can check it out yourself at the link in the description box below. And thank you once again to Kaku Ancient Seal for sponsoring this video.
So really long story, very, very short. Marc-Alexis was in charge of all Assassin's Creed stuff for the franchise from 2022 until just a matter of days ago. He worked with Ubisoft for close to 20 years and was involved in everything from Assassin's Creed 3 all the way up through the Animus Hub. Now, when he was put in charge of the franchise in 2022, he was tasked with coming up with the vision of what Assassin's Creed would be from like 2025 all the way through 2030, 2035. That's his goal, is big picture, broad strokes. Where are we going, right? That's his job. And that's a common thing for executives or people in senior positions of leadership. They're not really focused on this quarter or next quarter or what's releasing today or tomorrow. Their focus is on the stuff that is being planned for years down the road. So a lot of the things that he was involved in, we still have not seen. They were being discussed internally at Ubisoft, but there is one big thing that he had his name on. That's the Infinity Hub, as it was leaked and called before it launched, but it eventually launched known as the Animus Hub. This was that thing in AC Shadows where you could grind out basically dynamic quests and earn an in-game currency that could then be spent for cosmetics or lore drops and stuff like that. Prior to its launching, it was rumored to basically include a bunch of paid battle passes and stuff, and it sounded horrible. It sounded like basically Call of Duty HQ, where you would buy a skin for like Yasuke, and then you could use that skin as Yasuke in the multiplayer game they launch, and then in the mobile game over here. And the idea was that all of your purchases would be shared across the ecosystem so that you would be encouraged to spend more and to keep your account locked down and all that. Sounded terrible, sounded dreadful. And we basically made a ton of videos, me and many other AC creators and gaming creators. We complained about it. You guys complained about it on social media. And they heard us, and they walked it all back, apparently. The version of the Animus Hub we would eventually see in AC Shadows was a neutered form of its former self, as far as we can tell. As I said, it basically just includes a couple of repetitive quest lines, some objective markers on the map that you can engage with dynamically, and that update every week, and it's just a sort of dynamic activity tracker. It's nothing too fancy. But that was one of the things that Marc-Alexis Cote was involved with heavily, is setting up the Animus Hub as the future of AC. Now, to be fair, we won't know what form this will take in future games until we see it. It's most likely going to be used much more heavily in the Black Flag remake that's expected to come out early next year, and also in AC Hexe, which is the big game for Assassin's Creed next fall. So when we get those games, this narrative may change a lot, and maybe they will go back to putting battle passes in it, or maybe they'll come up with some really cool thing that makes this not feel terrible and stupid. But as with a lot of this, we won't know until we know. But what we do know now that we have known it is what exactly went down when Mac was pushed out, because he wanted to clarify he did not leave willingly. Like, this was not that he retired. This was not that he just decided, you know what, I've accomplished everything and I'm going to go start a new company or something. That's not what happened here. What he said was he wanted to clarify through a LinkedIn post what exactly went down. You can see here, many of you have expressed surprise that I would choose to leave Assassin's Creed after so many years, especially given the passion I still hold for it. The truth is simple. I did not make that choice. Ubisoft decided to transfer the leadership of the Assassin's Creed franchise to someone closer to its new organizational structure. Does that sound like he thinks they're choosing the best person for the job? Does it sound like he thinks that they are choosing a veteran of the franchise, somebody that's worked on it for decades, that loves it, has been in the studio? Or does it sound like they're going to put like a corporate dude in there that's going to follow the directions of the executives, whether it's what's best for the franchise or not? I'm not sure, but I don't think it sounds good, you know? And I'm saying this as somebody, I did not really like the direction that Mac was taking the franchise, okay? I did not like the direction of like make Assassin's Creed the most generic everything game for everybody, because I think that waters down what Assassin's Creed is. When you make a game for everybody, you have a game for no one. It's just this like amorphous blob of nothingness. And so I haven't liked Mac's direction, at least as far as I've seen it. And it seemed like a lot of the choices he was making were specifically to try and milk customers dry more, as opposed to improving the gameplay experience for players, which is kind of like video game development 101. But at the very least, he had worked on the franchise for 20 years and was a game developer at his core. I believe he got his start in programming. Like, he's involved in the day-to-day operations of building games. It sounds like from this that the person they want to put in charge of Assassin's Creed is going to be one of their like corporate dudes, whether they're from Tencent or from Charlie Guillemot's other company, which again, we'll get to in just a second. That remains to be seen. But I don't think this sounds particularly good. Again, you don't have to like Mac to say this may not be an improvement, okay? Mac can be like a -3 in terms of like net positive to negatives impact on the franchise. But him leaving is not necessarily better or good if it means they're putting a -10 in his place, you know? But I will say there is a way to read this line that actually I think could be very, very interesting. We'll talk about it in a moment, but there is somebody within Tencent's structure that has worked on some of the biggest Assassin's Creed games in history and was booted out of Ubisoft a handful of years ago, but that Tencent could actually come in and put in charge of stuff. which would be very, very interesting because he actually was game director on one of the most highly rated and praised Assassin's Creed games of all time. But we'll talk about that in a second. He does clarify that a different position was mentioned. He doesn't say that it was offered to him. He says it was mentioned. Like, hypothetically, if we got you this job, would you take it? But it doesn't sound like he was officially offered it. He said it did not carry the same scope, mandate, or continuity with the work I had been entrusted with in recent years. Sounds like a demotion. You're in charge of the franchise. Now you can step down and be like an executive producer or something, but you're not going to be in charge. You're not going to be the decision maker. Go sit down and you can still have a cushy job in the office, but you're not going to be the guy. I can totally understand why he'd be frustrated by that. There's also just a general rule in business that demoting senior executives doesn't work. It just doesn't. They don't respect the person you're putting in charge of them because they were previously in charge of that person. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So they're like, just replace them, get rid of them. It just doesn't work. The fact that they mentioned another job is honestly surprising to me. It doesn't sound like it was officially offered, but I would agree at least with the idea that it's probably best if they're going in a different direction that he's just not there, because I don't think demotions work, frankly. But he stresses once again, I did not walk away. I stayed at my post until Ubisoft asked me to step aside. And I don't think there's any way to interpret that other than that Ubisoft executives want to take Assassin's Creed in a different direction than he was taking it over the last few years. And some people will celebrate that. But what I would stress again is that all of the decisions with like AC Shadows were made back in 2019, 2020. They were made before he took over. So his actions had very little to do with AC Shadows, very little to do with like AC Mirage, or even with the Black Flag remake that comes out next year, or AC Hexe. All of that was in development before he took over, okay? So his actions will only be seen towards the end of this decade. And after that, we'll start to see the actions and ideas behind the new person that they will be putting in charge. But I will say that the direction that Mac was taking the franchise seemed to be one of generalizing the content, making it approachable for everybody, mass market appeal, and over monetization. It's possible that they're replacing him with somebody who goes back to basics and is like an OG of old school Assassin's Creed games and is going to return the franchise to form. And I do think that there's a possibility of that. The obvious choice for that would be to have Darby McDevitt go in and lead the franchise from here on out. He's narrative director. He could take this over and be in charge of it. I don't think it's super likely that that happens. It's technically possible. If you don't know, McDevitt has worked as a writer on pretty much every major Assassin's Creed game that's beloved by the community. And he's been working as narrative director on AC Hexe for 4 years already. Putting him in charge of Assassin's Creed would be a big signal to the community that they're returning to form and basics. They're going back to what worked in the early days of the franchise, because that's where Darby really had the most impact, and that's what he really cares about, is the lore, the Assassin's Creed, and the Brotherhood, which is something that recent games have been like scared to even discuss. In AC Shadows, it's almost like they were allergic to using the term assassin or like the Brotherhood. It was really, really weird. Same with Templars. It's like just a total afterthought. But all of that kind of assumes that he would even want the job. A lot of writers don't want to be in a corporate executive role because, shocker, it's kind of soulless and can kill your soul if you still had it somehow after climbing the ranks of a big corporation. So he might not even want it, even if they offered it to him. So who else could they look at? Well, you remember that they mentioned that they could put somebody in charge of Assassin's Creed that's closer to its new organizational structure. What is that structure? Well, it is 25% owned by Tencent. They invested $1.25 billion into the new venture, which is called Vantage Studios, and Ubisoft contributed multiple billions of dollars worth of IP in the form of Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and Rainbow Six Siege. And effectively, what it results in is 25% ownership going to Tencent, 75% going to Ubisoft. But it's also complicated because Tencent owns 49% of the Guillemot family holdings company that owns all of the Guillemot family shares of Ubisoft. And then Tencent also owns like 9.99% of Ubisoft. So they own a lot of Ubisoft and have a lot of control and power, okay? They're also just generally known as the benefactors. Like if Ubisoft gets in a financially bad spot, Tencent is Daddy Warbucks that can pay all of the bills and make all the problems go away. But Tencent is not treating this as a charity. They want this to be successful. And the reason they've put money into this is because they think there's an opportunity here. What is that opportunity? Well, it could be that they think they could put somebody in charge who they have under their employ who could take Assassin's Creed to the next level, maybe help it go through a bit of a renaissance, perhaps. And who better to do that than the guy who was game director on Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, who was game director on AC Origins and kickstarted the modern era of Assassin's Creed, and was game director on AC Valhalla, which was the most successful by revenue Assassin's Creed game of all time. It made $1 billion for Ubisoft. That all was a result of the work of one guy, Ashraf Ismail. He was hired by Tencent, and this news broke back in 2022. Long story short, Ash was caught up in a scandal where he was accused of misconduct within the company. It sounded as though the allegations were centered around him using his position of leadership within Ubisoft to like hook up with girls at conventions or bars or parties, basically be like, hey, you want to see my Assassin's Creed? Come back to my hotel room and I'll show you my hidden blade, and like that kind of stupid stuff. So he used his position in a really gross way to manipulate people and get stuff. Really professional, mature way of describing it, right, Luke? I was like trying to think, what word do I want to say that's not going to like trigger the YouTube bots, but stuff. Yeah, you can connect the dots. So after the investigation, he was booted out and fired. He left, but he was later picked up as a consulting creative director on Tencent-owned Timmy Studios Group. And in the last few years, it's actually been suspected that he has been working as a consulting creative director on Assassin's Creed Jade. That is the Assassin's Creed mobile game that basically looks like AC Odyssey, but on a mobile device. There was actually a playtest last year, and I saw gameplay of it. This game actually looks kind of insane for running on a mobile device. Nobody really knows where that mobile game is. It was supposed to launch like a year ago, and it's just MIA. But the point is, it's suspected that Ash has actually been basically creative directing for that game, covertly in the shadows from the background. And it could be the case that Tencent is like, this guy knows what he's doing with Assassin's Creed, even if he gets into trouble, let's just say, and made a number of pretty massive mistakes, let's say a handful of years ago. But Tencent, you know, they're the ultimate giga corporation. Tencent may be like, hey, this guy is not good for PR, let's just say, but he gets the job done. Put him in that role, whatever. Maybe that's what they're going to do. They put Ash in charge of the franchise, but maybe they put somebody else in the front-facing PR position to do the interviews and go out and do press tours and stuff. I could totally see that happening, where he's the decision maker, but they have somebody else who's more PR friendly that's not going to have to deal with a lot of headaches when it comes to like the press asking questions. Because ultimately, do you think Tencent like really cares if the press is upset? Like, no, they don't. If it's making money, they're happy. But do I think that that's super likely? Still, I don't really think so. Maybe, but I don't really think so. I think you have to look at just the plain reading of the text. What was said by Mac when he made this post on LinkedIn was that they were choosing to go with somebody closer to its new organizational structure. The people in charge of the new organizational structure are two individuals. It's a guy named Christophe Drenet, this guy, and another gentleman named Charlie Guillemot, this guy. Charlie Guillemot, the name may sound familiar, and that's because his daddy is Yves Guillemot. He has lived his entire life being handed positions, mostly by his father, but he did strike out on his own a number of years ago to make something of himself. And good for him. You know, if you've got wealthy parents, you have billionaire parents, and you're living under their shadow, respect for going off and doing your own thing, especially because you can prove to everybody you know what you're doing. You go off, you do something amazing, and then you go back to your dad and you're like, hey, I've earned the right to have a role within the family business. I can respect that, right? But what did he do? What did he go off and work on for a few years to prove he was a capable manager? And apparently he proved it to his father because he was put in charge as co-CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company that's now in charge of Assassin's Creed Rainbow, and Far Cry. What did he do? He worked on Unagi. He was a co-founder of this company. You can see they phrased it as being founded by ex-Ubisoft executives in 2022. When you click on who they are, it pops up like little avatars. We'll talk about those avatars in a second. But this is an AI Web3 entertainment platform. And I'm just going to read some of this and you tell me what any of this means. They have Persona. It's reshaping AI entertainment. Persona is revolutionizing AI entertainment by merging anime, gaming, and Web3 into an ever-evolving digital universe. It gets better. Just wait. Persona is more than just a profile picture. It's an instantly recognizable avatar collection and a whole world built around those avatars. They basically have avatars for each person, and they tie these to an NFT that's tied to Ethereum. It's just NFTs. It's just NFTs all over again. That's what it is. Persona brand. It's an ever-expanding, founded on deep lore stories are told across manga, short films, and AI experiences. Persona's nostalgic retro vibes have captivated almost 400,000 fans. Okay, so you can use your avatar to participate in stories generated by AI and do it that way. Character 2.0, an AI agent introduced in September 23. Hannah is the main character of the Persona brand and story. It's a supercharged agent, cutting-edge AI agent with its own proprietary AI agent framework, leveraging the latest innovations, and it's transmedia. I was about to ask. AI agent featured in various media forms, including short films, manga, and games, designed to live alongside us daily. Not dystopian at all. You want an anime girlfriend? Boom, here you go. Doesn't she look great? Look, you can tell she's also looking for how this makes sense. She's looking for some semblance of anything of substance. To put this really, really simply, Yves Guillemot's son went off to prove that he was capable and a visionary. He went off and made a Web3 AI NFT storyboard digital girlfriend platform and launched 4 little like sports games where you can basically trade what are effectively cards for different players. And it's NFTs. I mean, it's just what it is. You trade NFT cards of players in different like sports leagues, okay? Basketball clubs and football clubs. That's what they've done. As you can see at the very bottom of the website, founded in 2022, former Ubisoft executives, specifically the CEO's son. I'm not sure if he earned that executive position personally, but you can see he's right there in that role. And after this, he went back to Ubisoft and was literally handed the keys to a multi-billion-dollar company in the form of Vantage Studios and has been put in charge of thousands of developers working on Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and Rainbow Six. When Mac says that they're choosing to put somebody in position that's closer to their new structure, their new organizational structure, it could mean that Tencent's putting one of their guys in. It could also mean that Charlie, the co-CEO, is putting in charge one of his buddies. That's just as likely. If he's co-CEO, that he puts in charge one of his guys. I understand some people really did not like Marc-Alexis Cote. I did not like the direction he was taking the franchise myself. But the person that is now in charge of these 3 gigantic franchises has demonstrated a lack of vision, and even like, I don't even know what the term is for the opposite of vision, where you are actively pursuing and chasing the opposite of what's cool and interesting and successful. Like, is the term loser? Is that what it is? Because that's what this is. That's what this is. This platform, Unagi, is literally buzzword central. If I was trying to make a website for an imaginary company that embodied everything that was toxic and stupid about the last few years of like tech bros and game design guys that don't know what they're talking about, this is it. Like, this is almost too on the nose to be believable, but this is literally what he did before being handed the keys to the kingdom. So maybe I am just being cynical and short-sighted or something. Maybe I need to believe in Charlie Guillemot and his AI NFT vision. And, you know, maybe in 5 years we'll look back and be like, oh my God, Charlie was so ahead of his time. I can't believe it. He's right. Web3 is the future of Assassin's Creed. Maybe that's what we do. I don't personally suspect that's what will be happening, but time will tell. But I think that this is once more just an example of Ubisoft choosing to put people in positions not based on the merits of their work and skill, but based on their connection to the family and the loyalty that they've exhibited to the family. And that is not how you have a successful company. The one potential saving grace with all of this is that Tencent, amazingly enough, that's the saving grace, Tencent's involved. And Tencent is primarily interested in successful games. They want to make money on their investments. So if they have influence and they see that this is where the new guy wants to take it, I don't blame them for maybe coming in and be like, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. Okay. Or we're not giving you any more money. Figure it out. Put this guy in charge. Do this, do that. Maybe their mandate is to require gotcha stuff in the games because that's Tencent's big moneymaker. I don't know. But all I'm saying is that based on everything we've seen in the last few days, I've seen some people really celebrating the shakeup with Mac's departure. And I see it as the first domino falling that's about to knock over the whole house of cards, because you can't just look at Mac's departure in a vacuum. You have to look at it in the broader context of everything going on. And I think that it's just another example of the problems that's plagued Ubisoft for a decade now, really 2 decades, frankly. And it just is going to continue until the Guillemot family relinquish some level of control. And I hope that that's happening already, but I've not seen much indication of that. So to put it simply, I'm worried about the future of Assassin's Creed. I think the more I find out, the worse it looks. There's things that are going to happen in the next few years that I think will be exciting. For example, we know that AC Invictus is still being worked on in Montreal. And we just actually earlier this morning, right before I filmed, we got this picture where Abu Bakr Salim and Alex Wilton Reagan posted this picture together. It's Bayek and Aya, and they're in the recording booth together, filming and recording audio for something. Why would they need to do that? I think it's because they're going to be playable characters in AC Invictus. It was actually something that was previously leaked and sort of rumored. Jonathan, the famous YouTuber from France who talks about this stuff, he had a report out whenever this was, September of 24, where he talked about it, but he basically described how there were going to be different characters for players to choose from, probably including Bayek and Aya. So they're probably recording audio for that, which I think is kind of cool. And I think we'll see Invictus, we'll see Hexe, we'll see the Black Flag remake, and those all may be really, really cool. But what's happening right now is what's going to affect the next 5, 6, 7 years of Assassin's Creed. It's the long-term scope and vision that's being shifted and changed. And that's something I'm much more anxious about. I think the Black Flag remake will probably be really cool and fun to revisit that with modern graphics and presentation. I think that'll be cool. I think Hexe genuinely sounds really cool. A dark, gritty, grounded, linear narrative game in the world of Assassin's Creed. That sounds really interesting. So I'm excited to see what that is. But it's what comes after that worries me. But I'm losing my voice almost completely now, so I'm going to stop recording now because I want to recover so that I can stream with you guys in the next few days. Thank you for watching. I love you all desperately. Thanks for hanging out with me. Let me know what you think of all of this in the comment section below. Do you think I'm just freaking out for no reason, or do you think that this sounds like hot donkey ass? I don't know. Let me know. Thank you for watching. I love you all desperately, and I'll see you in the next video, hopefully with a better voice. Until next time, my friends, much love. I'll see you soon. Hugs and kisses. Bye-bye.